And now we're going to just have a small excerpt from the film, from the book. I'm so sorry, I'm surrounded by so many people from film. So we're going to have Simone Singh, who is going to read for us first.
Thank you, Ajay. I'm still Simone Singh, in case you forget next time around. Great for reading. All right, here we go. Can you see through it? That didn't work out very well, but thank you. Yes, would you please?
That Simone's reading from is when the INA are on the journey, moving towards Kohima, for their tryst with destiny, and they're passing through these little Naga villages, and it's all the different experiences which they go through during that time. She's going to share one of those.
Captain, get me a troop from that Gurkha unit, the one which came over to our side last week. Yes, sir. Sir, for sentry duty? No, I want them for a really special op. Debraj had a wicked grin on his face and his eyes sparkled with mischief. Bands of dacoits had been terrorizing the countryside around Mamid. The retreating British had freed the inmates of the local prison, and these criminals had now taken to rape, pillage, and highway robbery. They were difficult to track as they just melted back into the jungle after their sorties. Debraj had got an idea on how to stop them. He chose 20 of the Gurkhas, all short and slightly built. When he told them what he wanted them to do, they collapsed in laughter. Gurung, their sergeant, turned red. He was very fair and blushed easily. You're perfect, Gurung. You'll make a very pretty lantal. The men guffawed even louder. Lantal was Burmese street lingo for a sexy girl. Debraj's idea was to dress them up as women and use them as bait. The unit barbers gave them close shaves and reddened their lips and darkened their eyes, and they got into their glangs and salaus, native skirts and jackets. Well, something's missing. So they got hold of a crate of oranges and chucked 2 to each man. Then they were driven off, accompanied by whistles and lewd comments from the rest of the unit. At the local market, they drew a lot of attention, giggling and bargaining loudly. Then, armed with kukris under their salaus and revolvers in their baskets, they boarded a local bus bound for one of the outlying villages. 3 hours after being jostled on the potholed road, the girls hanging on desperately to the shifting fruit under their dresses, the bus was stopped by a group of rough-looking, unshaven men, armed with traditional long knives and shotguns. Licking their lips, they lined up the girls on the side of the road. The leader, grinning through stained teeth, spat out a long stream of tobacco juice as he made a beeline for Gurung, easily the prettiest. As he roughly felt up the sergeant's body, lingering, his fetid breath smelling of cheap country liquor, making Gurung almost gag, his hand fell on a most unladylike appendage. Frowning in puzzlement, he gave it an exploratory squeeze. That did it. The kukri hidden inside Gurung's jacket came out in a bright silver arc, and the man's throat was slit from ear to ear. With a blood-curdling cry of Ayo Gurkhali, Gurung went into what the Gurkhas call divine frenzy. With his pretty features distorted into a snarl of revulsion, he leapt and slashed the next man across the throat, and then pirouetted to plunge his kukri into the next dacoit's eye. Most armies of the world lacked the nerve to face a full-on Gurkha charge. This was just a gang of common criminals. With Gurung menacingly polishing his kukri, the dacoits spilled all their secrets about their hideouts and their spies in the villages. Legends grew about the fair-skinned, beautiful female spirit who lopped the heads off evildoers. Children were cowed into eating up their food on threats of having her invoked. And no bus running along that road was ever stopped again.
We just
Well, Rajat Kapoor, or like the Italians say, Rajat Kapoor.
So Rajat is going to read from the beginning part of the book, where we're setting it up. The whole story started in 2013. The National War Museum in London declared the twin battles of Kohima and Imphal as the greatest battle that the British had ever fought. They rated it above Dunkirk and Waterloo. And so when this news came out in Calcutta, 23rd January, Netaji's birthday, in a small little tea shop, some men have gathered, and this is what transpires.
Dulalda greets his latest client with obvious fondness. Good morning, Sudipta Babu. So how are things with our favorite young journalist? Sudipta rubs his hands, freezing Dulalda. Haru, my boy, one chai. Nice and hot, chop chop. He gestures towards Balaida's open paper. So what's the latest on that chit fund scam? Balaida shakes his head in disgust. That Madan fellow got red-handed. Shameful. Bambalda scratches his stubbly grey beard. Mark my words, what India needs is a military dictatorship, like Pakistan. A strong hand at the head. No, Dada. Strong hand won't work anymore. What we need is a strong foot to give one tight big kick up everyone's ass. There is muted laughter, a shake of heads, a scratching of bellies around the table. The sound of drumbeats and shouted slogans from the main road breaks the moment of reflection. Ganesh Babu looks up with exasperation. Now what? Abar ki? Dulalda gets up and pokes his head round the corner to look down the street. Of course, today is 23rd January, Netaji's birthday. Ganesh Babu throws his hands up in exasperation. Oh, Re Baba, those bloody clowns will be out on the streets, left, right, marching around in those khaki shorts, causing traffic jams. The old man slumped in the corner, a shadow shape slowly stirs. Oops, I better hurry up then, mutters Bambulda, starting to gather his things. I have to go all the way to the Dalhousie area. The bank is really giving me a royal runaround over my pension checks. Sudipta too starts to take out change to pay Haru. But Ganesh Babu, if Netaji had been there today, this would have been a different country. He had such visions, such plans. Ganesh Babu looks at him curiously. Really? And how would a youngster like you know about Netaji? That's all ancient history. I'm a journal. I make it my business to know. And anyway, he's still relevant today. It's not just me. Every Bengali, every Indian should know what Netaji could have done. Balaida, who has been engrossed in his paper, suddenly slaps one page. What a coincidence. Here we were just discussing Netaji, and see, there's a big article on him. Something about Imphal and Kohima. The old man sits up. The Irani glass rattles against his plate. Ganesh Babu is skeptical. Written by some party bigwig's chamcha. The Communist Party used to hate him when he was alive. But now they blow conch shells and clean up the crow shit on his statue once a year and make a big hoo-ha. Balaida shakes his head. No, actually it's written by a Thomas Jones, a Britisher, I think. It's about some battle. Here, you read it. He hands the paper to Sudipta. Secret files made finally public by Thomas Jones about a battle between the British and the Japanese and Azad Hind Fauj, Netaji's army. Happened in 1944. For 2 weeks, the future of the British Empire hung in the balance, etc., etc. Wow, look at this. Recently, UK's National Army Museum conducted a poll on Britain's greatest battle fought over the last 400 years. Waterloo, Aliwal, D-Day, Normandy, Roxdrift and Imphal, Kohima were selected. But to everyone's surprise, the twin battles against Japan, Azad Hind Fauj fought in Kohima and Imphal in India, were voted the greatest ever. Sudipto looks up, his eyes shining. Then he goes back to reading. Most Indians are not aware that one of the bloodiest and most crucial battles of World War II was fought on their soil, which, if Japan had succeeded in winning, would have changed the fate of the Allied forces and maybe the course of Indian history. Ganesh Babu is still skeptical. Just a gimmick to sell newspapers. Sudipto is indignant. How can he be so offhand about this, Ganesh Babu? Look here, it says. Suddenly his hand is jolted. The old man, who has crept up silently, snatches the paper out of his hands. Hey, what the... But he falls silent. A demented spark lurks just under the surface of the old man's milky eyes. He clutches the crumpled paper to his chest. His other hand, shaking, palsied, is raised to fend them off. Part in imperious command, part in trembling entreaty. Slowly he backs away, shaking his head, then turns toward the murky light coming in from the street and holds up the paper. He reads silently, his lips moving imperceptibly, whisper of sound and breath. Balaida makes a silent but universally rude gesture, tapping his index finger against his temple. Bonkers, lost his marbles, it says. Haru stifles a giggle. The fog has thickened again, and inside the tea shop, there is a hush. Then the old man sighs, looks up. The rheumy eyes peer at them over the thick wire-framed spectacles. The ghost of a smile appears on his seamed face. When he speaks, his voice is hoarse, strained, almost as if he hasn't used it for a really long time. Finally.
Check. Thank you so much, Rajat. And now, finally, we have the girl who makes her path wherever she goes, Vidya Balan.